what we would do is open a web browser, and we type in our IP address. And in this case, it happens to be this one. So this then pulls up the web page that's on the tool, on the Cross EPI 2. And in looking at this right now, my Profibus network is good. That's why it's green. It's telling me here's the IP address, a tag name that I assigned to this system, the host name, and actually a firmware release. Then over here, it actually gives us information on the location. So if you had these in multiple plants or different buildings, you could actually define some of those things here. And it tells you how many different networks are connected, how many are monitored, how many are not or are deactivated, and how many actually have error events. We could then drill in to the system by clicking here, and we can see here's the PLCs that are on this system, which happens to be one PLC with 8 slave devices. There have been no failures of the master, and we've had 36 repeats of Profibus telegrams. Under the network details over here then, we can actually see some of the same information we had before, along with a start time and date, the baud rate, the number of devices, whether they're masters or slaves, and then if any of them have failed or have diagnostics, or if we've done any repeats, all of that data shows up here. Okay. Along with that, we can see things like a live list. So this live list shows me what's connected to the network and talking right now. And if any of these devices had an error, or they would be red, and if they had a diagnostic, they would be yellow. And then that would give us the ability to go and look at more information if we wanted to. There's also a bus statistics view. This view is not that great right now because all we're doing is really Profibus DPV 0. But if we had Profibus DPV 1 communications on the same wire, that information would show up here as well, along with if we did MPI on this network as well. So if we're programming over Profibus, for example. And then there's always going to be a little bit of it that is reserved. And if we had multiple masters, they would show how much of it was allocated to each master. Okay. Then there's also the failure statistics. And under the failure statistics now, we can see how many failures have occurred and how many repeats have occurred. So if you look at this address happens to be the master, we can see that here. And it shows we have 0 failures and 36 repeats. And that's actually what we're seeing in the graphic down below. And if you take this ET200S standard here at address 5, it's had 5 failures and 5 repeats, and that's what this is showing. And we can uncheck some of these items if we wanted to try to make the screen show up a little bit better if we had a lot of devices on the network. The other thing that we get from this screen is actually information out of our diagnostic repeater. So this diagnostic repeater can tell us if we've got any problems on each segment that's connected to it. The DP1 is the first segment, DP2 is second segment, DP3 is the third segment, whether we have a reflection or any failures in those systems. And then last but not least, we have an overview of the diagnostics. And this is basically every diagnostic event that has occurred since this device started up. So if you scroll down to the bottom here, you would actually see that I have 4 pages of diagnostics because I've actually had the system up and running for a couple of days, and I've been turning stuff on and off on purpose to kind of give a lot of information. But that's a great overview, but there's actually a better way to get at the information that's much more specific to the actual problem. And to actually do that, what we would do is I'm going to trigger a short circuit on one of my modules. And when I do that now, my PLC actually ends up with an error. A fault light comes on it. And, in a traditional system, you'd have to go and figure out what that error is. Here we could actually click on the network overview and see now that it's yellow instead of green. And because it's yellow, it tells us that we actually have a diagnostic, and we can go in and click and see that that diagnostic is actually on address 3. Okay. If we click on address 3, and we can actually see here that it's in slot 6 as well, but if I go to the diagnostic list now, it's going to pull up all of the errors for this specific device. So I can see that I have a problem with address 3, okay, and here's some detailed diagnostic information. I have it's happening in slot 6, so the module 6 is having a diagnostic, and it's actually happening on channel 1. channel 1 is the one that's having the short circuit. And you can see the tooltips are popping up as I move over these things. So it's telling you that, the correct the process wiring. So basically there's a wiring issue, okay? If I turn that back off and I do a refresh, it'll then show that the slave is now okay. All right. Another thing that we could do is simulate a slave failure for you here today. So what I'll do is turn off one of my slaves and go back out here, and you can see now that I have a red mark, and that's telling me that I have a failure. Also, look at this. It just popped up in the corner. I have my email open. This device is set up to send emails. So I received an email telling me that I have a slave failure. Okay. I can click here now and see that it's on this master, and actually it's this device that failed. And if I click on it and go to the diagnostic list again, I can see, slave status okay, slave status failed, a time and date stamp on that device. And if I turn the slave back on, once it's up and communicating, if I do a refresh here, it now shows that the slave status is okay. All right. And I get an all clear message back from the device telling me that the Profibus system is back up and running and everything is great. Last but not least, I wanted to show what would happen if we lost an entire segment of the Profibus network using the diagnostic repeater. So I'm going to disconnect my segment 3 here, which happens to be a bunch of my slaves. And if I go back out to the network overview, you can see we've got an error message here. It's telling me that at least one slave has a problem. Okay, and if I click on this now and drill in, I can see that I have a problem with basically all of the devices except the first one. The red tells me that these all failed, and the yellow tells me that I have diagnostic information that I could get. So I can click on my diagnostic repeater now and then go to the diagnostic list and see that, okay, segment 2 is okay, but 3 actually has a line diagnostic, and the reflection rate is 100%, and you can see what all these little tooltips popping up telling me what's going on too. The fault location is unknown, but it's in the range of addresses, and the distance is 0 meters away, and it's a break in the signal line A or B or no termination resistor. It's also telling me that segment 1 is okay here too. So basically it's saying there is a problem on segment 3, and there's a break in the line, and it tells you some things to help you try to figure out what would clear that problem up. So that really is my demo on this device. I can show you one more thing here. If I plug this back in, now my diagnostic repeater is coming back up. I'm going to get an email, and if I open up my email here, you'll see I've been getting all these different emails showing up as time occurs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to trigger a diagnostic a diagnostic fault again, saying that I have a short circuit. Okay, and when the short circuit message pops in here, if I actually click on this now, it's going to drill right into the device and show you exactly what the problem is, saying that I have a short circuit. So the email takes you directly to where the location of the issue is. I think that's pretty cool as well. So then to kind of finish things out, we are running a special on this device. The webinar special is it's $1,200 if it's ordered before December 31st of this year. The normal price is $1,600, and it's going to go back up to that after December 31st. But if you take advantage of this, before the end of the year, you can get a 25% discount on the product. Thank you for your time today, and I hope this was useful.